this is a topic that's quite close to my heart. Multisig wallets and timelocks. Um, when I got into Bitcoin, the first multisig wallet that I remember that came out was Copay, if I remember it well. It was a bit clumsy to use, difficult, to back up. Then I worked shortly with Casa. Casa is working basically on multisig with some additional white glove service, and they took the technology, mixed it with a good level of service. Since then, a lot of things happened, and Max will tell you all about it. But in general, what I feel about multisig is it's not just a additional operational security. It adds um, the possibility to create inheritance flow. It adds security to cooperative holding. So for company or wealth fund manager, it's an ideal setup. And also it adds a little bit counter duress protection to the human. Although none of this is bulletproof, and hopefully Max will tell you the why and how to use the multisig properly to avoid mistakes, and how to add time locks to multisig, which is a whole new level. And I'm really curious about that too. Let me introduce Max quickly. Most of you know him. Max has been a privacy advocate and freedom tech advocate for a long time, having worked with Wasabi, now with White Noise, recently published a book on privacy, which I really recommend you to grab. And please welcome Max, and I'll give you the word now.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And I'm really looking forward to this. We've had a couple good seminars in the past, and now we're going deep in one topic that we've covered on the previous seminars as well, because it is such a deep interwoven topic. We can do next slide, and that is multisig. So the idea here is that we want to protect our Bitcoin in a very secure and sophisticated way so that it's difficult for people to steal it and also difficult for us to lose access to it. And as is the tagline of Gart, hope is not a strategy, especially when it comes to your Bitcoin custody. You really need to think this through and spend some time on this and see what's available, the options that you might use, and then make a informed decision and build your own strategy. Next slide. So multisig is quite old, and it really reinforces what Bitcoin is all about, and that is the mantra of not your keys, not your coins. And as you might have realized in this saying that keys is plural, so actually this meme has been talking about multisig all the time, turns out. So next slide. The cool idea of Bitcoin multisig is that we can reduce the single point of failure. Where you have a traditional wallet, the one we all started out with is just a set of 12 words. And if anyone gets access to those 12 words, then your Bitcoin is gone. And that has always been a big security concern. And so there were different technologies invented to fix this, to make sure that you don't lose it and that also others cannot take it. And a single secret is not a lot of protection. In general, here comes the idea of a second factor that you might know from your SIM, SMS-based or 6-digit two-factor authentication codes. Just have a second confirmation before important actions get taken. And the naive way of doing this with the classical Bitcoin wallet is to add a passphrase. Right now you have 12 words plus the passphrase, and you need 2 out of 2 secrets in order to spend your Bitcoin. And for example, your hardware wallet doesn't remember the passphrase. So if an attacker breaks into the hardware wallet, he still doesn't have access to the Bitcoin because he's missing the passphrase. So this is an important piece of making Bitcoin more secure. But the issue with this is that you still gather all secrets at one point in one place. The issue here is that if someone kicks in the door after you've typed in your passphrase on the hardware wallet, then everything is unprotected and they would get access to your Bitcoin. And because Bitcoin is programmable money, we can use the trick of multi-signature to avoid this problem so that we have, let's say, 3 different hardware wallets and they're in 3 different locations. And instead of unlocking all 3 of them at the same place and time, we generate a transaction, we sign it in the first place with the first hardware wallet, and now we take the partially signed transaction to the second location with the second hardware wallet and give the signature there. So at no point in time is there any one place or time where all the secrets are kept together. And this is really, really powerful and helps a lot in the more advanced use cases of protecting Bitcoin. Next slide. This is also not only for individuals, if for your own stack, this is also really interested for teams of people. That is the original use case of multisig, was that 2 people need to verify and approve a transaction before it goes out. So more of the corporate or collaborative wallet setup, also used for families and trusted parties, etc. We'll go more through this today. In general, we'll talk about what multi-signatures actually are and how they technically work and how they work for you as a user, and then what different quorum designs you could choose. There's a whole bunch of flexibility, and we'll then further narrow in on that flexibility with Miniscript, which is a new cool thing you can do with Bitcoin Script that gives you vastly more complex capabilities than the naive multi-signature that you might be used to. Also, we'll talk about all the important other backup materials, specifically the wallet descriptor. That is the kind of treasure map that you need alongside the private keys in order to get your Bitcoin. And then also we'll talk about time locks. This is when you can make sure that coins are not valid to be spent before a certain time. Again, very helpful in more advanced setups, but definitely interesting to think about at least. But hopefully you'll walk away from this seminar with generally just having a good strategy or a good overview of what's currently available, and then start to work on the strategy that you might use for your own setup, at least to play around with. That's the goal. Next slide, please. And so also this is an interactive seminar, right? So at any point, unmute yourself and just interrupt me with questions or write them in the chat and I'll get to them as soon as possible. This shouldn't be just a video for you to watch. The goal of these webinars is to be interactive and to answer any questions that you have. So if I should cover anything that I haven't yet, or you need some more clarifications, just shout. It's always good to start with threat models. So let's do that. What does multisig actually protect against? And one aspect here is key compromise. So let's say one set of your 12 words, or even 12 words plus passphrase, gets compromised, then your wallet is still secure. And that is one of the important aspects, right? One key gets stolen, your wallet is still safe. I see we have a question from Adam. In the top part, there's written, crowded guidelines find critically. What does that mean? I'm not sure where you read that. Oh, sorry. The main wait, no, my main screen is Sophie's too. So right now you should see threat models for multisig. Do you see that? Give me a quick thumbs up. Another thing that multisig depends is that one location gets compromised. One of your backup locations is fully compromised, and then your wallet is still safe. And another amazing cool thing, if you have multiple keys and therefore multiple hardware wallets, then you can use different producers of the hardware wallets for each of these keys. And so if one of the companies is malicious and has some sort of key stealer implemented, then they would not get access to your money. So multi-vendor, multi-sig, super interesting. But there are some things that you really have to take care of. And that, for one, is the descriptor. So this clearly defines how you get from private key to address. And without that, you cannot easily spend your Bitcoin. Maybe you can recover it, but it's a pain in the ass. So just back up your wallet descriptor, super important. And yeah, make sure that that is there. Probably back it up alongside every private key, so that you can be sure that if you have one of the private keys, you also have the descriptor. Another thing that multisig cannot protect you is if you badly choose your locations. If your 3 hardware wallets are all under your mattress in your home, then you don't get the multi-signature benefits of multiple geography. And so choosing secure locations for your physical backups is still super important. Also, configuration errors is a huge issue. Specifically, just multisig is complicated, and there are some things that can go wrong in unintuitive ways, and then you yeah you see that you might lose access to some money. So be careful that you have good documentation, that you use standard technologies and don't use some home baked solution, and make sure that you keep understanding this for years to come. Also, physical coercion. If someone would coerce you physically, then and you are still the only one that has access to all of the keys, then you might give him access to it just to make the pain stop, unfortunately. And that means then that you alone might still be a weak point, even if you're using a fancy 7 out of 15 multi-signature, if you can be coerced to perform all of the 7 signatures that are needed.
If I may add one point to this, indeed, in case of physical coercion, having just extra time that allows for negotiation, I think it's a good strategy to have that also the multisig brings.
Yep, absolutely. Next slide. And here's just to point more out that these are all technologies, and how you apply them in detail always depends a lot. And so what multisig allows you is to have a what we call a m out of n threshold quorum, which means that you can have a, for example, 2 out of 3, a 3 out of 5, a 1 out of 7, etc. These are all possible quorums that you can configure. And what it says that the of 3, for example, means that there are 3 possible public keys and public private key pairs that have the authority to spend it. And then the first digit is 2 out of these 3 are actually required to spend the money. So if you have a 2 out of 3 and you have a Coldcard, a Foundation Passport, and a Blockstream Jade, for example, then you need to have at least a Coldcard and the Foundation in order to get to the money. And as you can see, a 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 5 is really interesting, because in the 2 out of 3 case, if you lose access to one hardware wallet, you can still recover with the other 2 leftover hardware wallets. So one loss of keys is still acceptable. And vice versa, if an adversary gets access to one of your hardware wallets, he can still not spend the money, which is also very useful, right? So if one location gets hacked, one device is malicious, whatever, then your money is still safe. With the 3 out of 5, you get this with the number of 2, right? So you can lose 2 hardware wallets and still recover, or 2 hardware wallets might get hacked and you're still safe. You can do also things like a 1 of 2. This might be useful if you have some spending money for your household and you want that both you and your wife gets to spend the money. So this would be interesting here. You could also just share the private key of a single signature wallet, but then you lose the audit trail of who actually signed this transaction. And with Bitcoin multisig, you could see exactly that your wife is spending money again. So yeah, some nuances there. You could also do a, let's say, 5 out of 5. And this is possible and gives you kind of the highest level of protection against an attacker. 5 devices need to be compromised in order for the money to move. But it also leaves you worse off for the loss case. if even one key gets lost, then all the money is gone, and like 1 out of 5 keys might easily get lost somehow. Yeah, the alternative to this is single sig and passphrase, or something like Shamir secret sharing. All of these are interesting. They just give you that problem of all the secrets need to be combined at a single point in time. Cool. Let me see if there are any questions in the chat. Nothing so far. Cool. Next up. Yeah, there are some limits on Bitcoin script language. Initially, there was a limit of 11 out of 15 multisig. So this was something where, for example, the Liquid Federation uses the absolute maximum of 11 out of 15. This really is more interesting for automated software smart contracts like Liquid or Lightning or Arc. This is where we see more fancy usage of multisig and time locks. Recently, with the Taproot upgrade and the introduction of Schnorr signatures, in theory, we can now increase this quite a lot. So we're talking about 70 out of 100 still being possible. That still, yeah, is not easy, but at least it's possible now in the protocol. Now the limitation is more like hardware signing capability. So most hardware wallets don't support this yet, unfortunately. Next slide.
What is the biggest multisig you've seen in practice?
Well, I think Liquid is quite big with the 11 out of 15. And again, this was the maximum up until like 4 years ago or something when Taproot was introduced. Now you would probably have to check with someone like Frost, Snap. They are a hardware wallet producer, and I think they had like it's something of like 20 hardware wallets daisy chained together.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't remember the exact number, but yeah, that's probably still around that. I mean, anything much above that, I'm not sure if it really makes sense. It might, but you probably need a good reason for it. The key magic to success for multisig is that it introduces diversity into your setup. And diversity is good in security. You want to have multiple layers of defense, called defense in depth. And with multisig, you cannot only you put your hardware wallets in different places, which is already huge, but you can also use different manufacturers. And you can use different ways of getting your entropy. You could use different ways for backing up your private keys and for using passphrases or not, and I don't know, different types of indexes and so on. You can really add quite a lot of extra complexity, which will make it more difficult for you or an attacker to spend the Bitcoin. And while still retaining some optionality that if some pieces break and you forget some private keys, then you still can spend your money. But the important caveat to say because of this diversity is that you need to document it. Multisig gets super complex really, really quick. And it might be impossible to recover your setup if you don't have good documentation. So make sure that you have a safe place to put that documentation, encrypt it, and so on. But make sure that you have somewhere a good overview of what your setup is, which keys are involved, and so on, because you will forget this, at least after a couple months or years of using it, even while you're still signing stuff. But especially if you're just holding and not really spending anything. Next slide. Ultimately, whenever you make a Bitcoin wallet, whenever you deal with any important secrets, really make it a official ceremony and think about this carefully. It's an important process, and you should really take care. So start with designing it really well. Understand what's available. Understand your threat model. Understand the assets that you have, and in terms of locations and hardware and time and trusted counterparties, and then plan and carefully go through the implementation that you've prepared. But then after you're done, don't send money in it yet, but double and triple check that you really have all the backups and that you verified your documentation and that you have access to the secrets that you think you have access to. So this is part of the rehearsal. And really make sure that you have good practices that repeat, where you practice the actual, not just regular spending, but also disaster recovery scenarios of your backup. Time locks also come in here for these. I mean, they need to be designed for it, but then also there's some maintenance, which we'll talk about in a bit. Ultimately, hardware wallets make a lot of sense. So make sure that your keys should probably be on a hardware wallet unless you have a good reason not to. They exist, but for most users, the hardware wallet is the right choice. And yeah, make sure you got all your fingerprints and wallet descriptors and so on backed up and implemented in a coordinator. Next slide. So the way that you will end up using your multi-signatures is that there are two separate steps. The first is to create your private keys. You will probably do that on your hardware wallet, maybe on a laptop or phone. But ultimately, first you generate keys, and this time multiple. And if you need a 2 out of 3 multisig, then you need to have 3 keys. So most likely 3 different hardware wallets, maybe from 3 different vendors. And for each of them, generate your private key, back it up properly, consider if you want a passphrase and so on, and make sure that you have all the everything nicely done for each of these keys. The second step is to create the wallet, so to say. And the wallet is the exact definition of who can spend a certain stack of Bitcoin and how exactly do we spend them. So in order to do this, you will need to have a wallet software app. Nunchuck is a good one, Liana, Sparrow, Electrum, whole bunch of different options. But this is the wallet where you then say that, hey, I want to create a 2 out of 3 multi-signature. Here are the 3 keys that I want to use. And for this, you will export the public key from the hardware wallet over to the app or the phone, the wallet, to add a certain key into your 2 out of 3 multi-sig quorum. And once you're done with this and you have ported all 3 keys from your hardware wallets into your phone, then you create the wallet descriptor, which says this is how we generate addresses so that these 2 out of 3 keys can spend them. And this wallet descriptor, for one, back it up on steel, encrypted USB sticks, whatever. But you also have to add it back into the hardware wallet. The hardware wallet generates the private key, and you export the public key into your software wallet. And then you export the wallet descriptor from your phone software wallet to the hardware wallet, so that now the hardware wallet knows what exactly it is signing. It needs to know all of the other public keys of the 2 other hardware wallets, which are part of this wallet, and it needs to know if it's a 2 of 3 or a 1 of 3, etc. And for this, the output descriptor, the wallet descriptor, has to be moved from the coordinator phone app to the hardware wallets. And from then on out, your hardware wallet should be the trusted screen. With hardware wallets, we kind of assume that the phone or laptop is hacked. And so you shouldn't solely trust on what your phone or laptop is showing you on the screen. You should verify that on the hardware wallet itself. So when you migrate over the wallet descriptor, check that all of the public keys are matching of the other 2 hardware wallet signers. And then when you're generating an address, make sure that it is also shown on all 3 of the hardware wallets that you have before you start sending money over there. To be sure that these are the hardware wallets that know how to get to the addresses and how to generate signatures for them. And yeah, then your software coordinator wallet will connect to the Bitcoin network and find out if these addresses ever have received any Bitcoin. If yes, it will give you confetti and say that you have many sats. and then you can spend it. And in order to spend your Bitcoin out of the multi-signature, first in the coordinator phone app, Nunchuck, for example, click on spend Bitcoin or send Bitcoin and paste the address and amount that you want to send. And now it will ask you with which of the three hardware wallets do you want to sign this transaction. You need to sign it with two of them. And it will prepare a unsigned Bitcoin transaction that you now port over to your hardware wallet. So you go to your hardware wallet, you unlock it with the PIN, you type your passphrase if needed, you QR code scan, NFC tap, or SD card transfer, or via USB cable. In whatever shape or form, you get the unsigned transaction from the phone to the hardware wallet. There you check on the screen if everything is correct, and then approve and sign the transaction on the hardware wallet. Later, then moving the final signature from the hardware wallet to the phone. And now your phone will tell you 1 out of 3 keys have signed, and you need 2 out of 3. So you repeat the step once more, and afterwards you can broadcast the transaction and the Bitcoin will be moved. So this is the regular way of using multisig. Again, works well on the phone, works well with many hardware wallets, also works on laptops, and so on. But a real powerful way of doing this. Just really make sure that you validate things on the hardware wallet, and if you ever see any discrepancy, like the two different hardware wallets disagree on what is the actual addresses of this current wallet, then you must be careful to not send money there because maybe you cannot recover it. So always double check your backups and your wallet setups before you send any money in. Next slide, please. Also, one thing to realize is the derivation path. This is something that is part of the wallet descriptor, but if you ever have some issues, then maybe the wallets disagree on how they get from the 12 words to the actual private keys. That's the derivation. Oh, okay. We've already talked about how to actually sign the transaction. That is the stance between your phone and the hardware wallet. And yeah, next slide. I've already covered all of these. So let's talk about time locks. This is another thing that has been in Bitcoin since a long time, and it's most heavily used in smart contracts like the Lightning Network. The Lightning Network requires time locks to enable really fast and cheap Bitcoin transactions off-chain. But we've not really seen them in Bitcoin wallets for everyday users for quite some time. But recently they've made a scene again, and their specifically Liana wallet is interesting for this. Also Electrum supports it, I believe. But there's two different ways that you can lock Bitcoin so that that time has passed in order for the Bitcoin to be unlocked. The first one is a absolute time lock. So this is when you say that these coins are locked until the year 2050. And then any coin that gets sent to this address cannot be spent after or until the year 2050 arrives. So this is a certain fixed either block height or timestamp, and yeah, every Bitcoin full node will mark transactions as invalid if it spends a coin that is on an address with a time lock that is not yet reached. Um, one of the issues with this is uh, if the time comes, then you cannot easily, or rather, let's talk about the second option, and that is the relative time locks. And for this, you can also go to the next slide. And here you say that this is an address where a coin can only be spent from if the coin that was received is older than a certain amount of blocks or hours or days. So basically, whenever you get paid, it starts the timer. And so you could set up a wallet that says, whenever I get paid, the money should be locked for 1 year. And that means every salary that you receive once a month will be time locked for a year. And after the first year, you can spend the first month's salary. A month later, you can spend the second month's salary, and so on. So this is the relative aspect. And in and of itself, this might not be so interesting, but what you can now do is to combine multi-signature and time locks. And this is where the relative one comes in. Because you could say that I want to be able to spend out of my single signature wallet at any time. And so whenever I want, I can sign a transaction with my single sig and it will get broadcast and is a valid transaction. But if I have not spent this coin for 1 year, then the 2 out of 3 of my best friends have the capability of spending the Bitcoin. So now we've introduced multiple spending conditions. The default condition, which is at any time I can sign, and the relative time locked spending condition, which is if I don't spend the money after a year, then maybe something happened to me and my friends should be able to recover the money. And if I just lost my private key, they'll probably give me the money back because they're my friends. But if I actually had a boating accident tragically, then they would have the money to give to my heirs. So really interesting for the our last seminar, which was all about inheritance. The dead man switch relative time lock multisig is a really powerful inheritance use case where you can be sure that your heirs will get access to the wallet, but only if you don't move the wallet anymore. And this is the dead man switch. One unfortunate caveat in how Bitcoin works is that the dead man switch relative time lock has a 15-month ceiling. So you cannot lock coins for longer than a year and a half with this method, meaning you just simply cannot lock it to in 10 years after you've received the money.
Why is that? Why 15 months?
It's a weird technical nuance of how Bitcoin works. This uses the inversion field inside a Bitcoin transaction, and that is just a large number. And at certain ranges, the number means certain things, and so there simply wasn't enough range left in the field of the transaction that was used to encode this relative time lock to more than 50 months worth of blocks. Like what is that? Yeah, maybe like 70,000 blocks or something like this was the maximum that was possible there. Yeah, Victor, if you have a question, go ahead.
Yeah. What about, is it one address that you need to move, or it's something like XPub, and whatever address I receive Bitcoins, all the rest of the XPub will be time locked? Or is it we are speaking about one address, like multi-sig one address? Thanks.
Yeah, that's a great question, and this is where miniscript comes in, and or well, sorry, actually, and the output descriptor more like it. So the output descriptor is the XPub of an advanced wallet with multi-sig or time locks. So if you would want to have this time locked thing, you first create your private key, then you create the wallet where you reference the public key saying, hey, this key should sign, and you also reference the relative time lock. So you say this key can only sign after 50,000 blocks. And that is in the wallet descriptor. And from this now you can generate a new address, and this address will encode the script. And whenever a coin gets sent to this address, or in other words, whenever the address appears on the output side of a Bitcoin transaction, then the full node will check, okay, what's the block height where this coin was received. And then if a spending transaction appears in the mempool, the node will check, the node will see the exact spending condition of this address and will then check when was the coin that is now being spent, when was this coin created? So the timestamp of the previous transaction of that input. And if that timestamp is, what is it, lower than the current block height. So that really means, like, if you receive your salary once a month, then every coin that you receive into this wallet will have that current month plus 1 year of a time lock, and it will work across addresses.
But is this per address or per wallet that has multiple addresses, as from the user perspective?
So the wallet is the wallet descriptor, and out of this you can derive many addresses. But for any one of the addresses, as soon as it receives a coin, that coin will be encumbered by the time lock. So kind of technically, the time lock is not on an address basis, but on a UTXO basis. So even if you would reuse your addresses, let's say you give one address to your employer, he pays you every month to the exact same address. Every receiving output that you receive on this address has its own time lock that gets started when that transaction gets confirmed.
Also, so it's always postponing. Let's say I have 12 months time lock. So even if I send a SAT to a newly generated address from that wallet, it will restart the lock.
Exactly, for that output, right? So you receive the first output on your address, that will start the 12 months trigger for this, let's say, call it 1 Bitcoin. Now you receive 2 Bitcoin on the same address a month later, then those 2 Bitcoin you will not be able to spend in 11 months. You will only be able to spend those 2 Bitcoin in 12 months.
Mm-hmm. Do you think this incentivizes address reuse?
No, because it doesn't matter. Reused addresses or fresh addresses behave the same.
Go ahead, Sophie.
Yes, we have a question here in the chat, and I just wanted to read it for you, Max. It says, what do we think about multi-share Sleep 39? And where does it stand compared to multisig? Is Sleep 39 even still a thing?
Yeah, great question. And so what Slip 39 is a new backup scheme for your private key that relies on Shamir secret sharing. So Shamir secret sharing is, again, a way to split a secret into 3 out of 5 parts, or any m out of n threshold that you would want. And this is, I think, mainly or only implemented by Trezor. I don't think many others are supporting it, which is a downside. But the different UX is basically that you get, when you set up your wallet, instead of getting one set of 12 words, you get 3 sets of, I think, 21 words or 23 words or something like this. And then you need 2 out of those 3 sets of words in order to get your private key back. It gives you a little bit of a similar UX, or rather similar protection, as a passphrase. A passphrase is a 2 out of 2, and you can make a 2 out of 2 Shamir secret share as well. But you can also make a 6 out of 7 if you want to. So Shamir secret share is more flexible, and it differs from multisig mainly in the sense that it is still designed that at one point you will put all of your 6 private key shares into the same hardware wallet, and then the whole private key gets recovered in that one single hardware wallet. And then you have that single point of failure. If any bad guy comes in with the $5 wrench after you've put in all of the shares, then he has the private keys as well. Yeah. So again, I'm not saying that like you should never use Shamir secret share or only multisig. These are different tools that help with different things, and they also nicely compose on top of each other. Let's say you want to do a 2 out of 3 multi-signature with the 2 co-founders of your business, and but your own private key. So you have 1 out of the 3 private keys of this multi-signature, and your 1 private key you want to back up into a 3 out of 5 Shamir secret share, so that if you have 3 out of your 5 backup situations, then you can get the private key back. But that private key alone is just 1 out of the 2 required signatures for the business wallet. So they nicely compose on top of each other. There's also Seed XOR, which is a Coldcard thing that also works a little bit different, but basically you can take any two private keys, any two sets of 12 words, and create a new private key that is a 2 out of 2. So it gives you also this 2 out of 2 thing, where instead of using a passphrase, you would get two sets of 12 words, and you need to combine both sets of 12 words in order to get your Bitcoin back.
I have another question about multisig. If I have
Yes.
my own private key on my Trezor, and I'm using it as a single seed, just not the multisig, just normal, can I use that one as a part of the multisig scheme, or do I need to create a new one? Or what is the best thing to use it? Should I just create a new one?
Another great question. And yes, you can use the same key, quote unquote. More accurate, you can use the same set of 12 words. So the 12 words are used to derive your private key. The 12 words are not your private key in and of itself. And when we derive from 12 words to private key, we use what's called an index of a hierarchical deterministic wallet, which basically just means one set of 12 words gives you an infinite amount of possible private keys which you can use to generate addresses for. And so if you put the same set of 12 words into a single SIG wallet, it will use a different derivation path than if you put that set of 12 words into a multi-sig wallet. Just because that's how it was standardized, that we should use different derivation paths for different types of wallets. And so this means that the actual private key being used for the single sig versus multi-sig is a different one, meaning also the address, there's no address reuse or no public key or private key reuse, but the source of entropy is the same. There's the same 12 words. So technically it's possible. If you want to do that is another question. Especially if you've used this single sig key, which you have in your Trezor for, I don't know, 5 years, and now you want to make a new wallet that's super secure. If you reuse the same private key, then you inherit all of the possible compromises that might have happened before. Maybe someone already got your 12 words somehow and is just waiting until you put more money into it, or any other scenario. So oftentimes you will want to create a new private key with new fresh entropy for different wallets. But sometimes you do want to have one master secret, which you're really sure that you have a good backup for, and then you can derive secondary secrets from that. Also a very reasonable way to do. And the index of hierarchical deterministic wallets allow you that. Next slide, please. And again, keep the questions coming. They're super helpful and hopefully make it a bit more useful for you. So let's talk a little bit about Miniscript. Miniscript is a kind of a programming language that compiles down to Bitcoin script. And Bitcoin script is the actual programming language that defines under which condition a transaction is valid or invalid. So a single SIG wallet is also a Bitcoin script that says put this public key on the stack and put the signature on the stack and verify if it's true, and if yes, then return a 1. That's basically what Bitcoin script does. But it's a very unintuitive programming language that's super weird. It's just weird. And it's easy to make programming mistakes and write bugs in your script so that you might lose your money. Happened many, many, many times where developers lost Bitcoin because they created some experimental spending condition in Bitcoin script, and turns out that there is a bug and now it's unspendable and you cannot create a valid proof for that valid transaction. So in order to make the Bitcoin programming language more usable, they've created Miniscript, which is a much easier programming language where you can write a spending condition in really high level logic. Like you could have the spending condition of at any time the single sig key can spend the wallet. After 3 months relative time lock, this 2 out of 3 multisig can spend it. After an absolute time lock of 2 years, then this single sig, this key can sign a valid transaction, but only if these other 2 out of 3 also agree. And this is now rather complex wallet that I just described, but it would compile from this high-level miniscript programming language into the actual bits and bytes of Bitcoin script that is needed for the consensus machine in a very efficient and secure way. So ultimately, it allows wallet developers to give much more expressivity to the spending conditions of your wallet and make much more advanced features. It's still pretty limited. Like the things you can do is single signatures, multi-signatures, time locks, and hash locks, which basically means give me the pre-image to a certain hash. The Lightning Network uses that. Those are the 4 major script categories that Bitcoin provides. There's a couple others, but these are the main ones. And so you can imagine different types of spending conditions you could set up here, but it's still rather limited and basic. But then you can play around with more complicated things. And so miniscript is still rather new. There are Nunchuck supports it, Liana supports it, and then also we have the hardware wallet side is Ledger, Bitbox, Coldcard, Blockstream, Jade. I believe
What
those.
about Frost?
No,
Snap?
Frost.
No.
So Frost actually doesn't use miniscript because it, or maybe it does actually. Now that I'm not quite sure, but so
I'm
it
not quite sure,
uses
but I was believing so.
it uses a very simple form of Bitcoin script. The Bitcoin script of FrostSnap is a single public key and a single signature. It looks indistinguishable from a single signature wallet. All the complexity happens outside of the Bitcoin script language, just with native cryptography of public key and signature aggregation. So this is something where I don't quite recall if miniscript also already exposes these taproot Schnorr signature things, but probably it does. So yeah, it might actually use miniscript, which just compiles into a super simple Bitcoin script of just a single public key. Yeah. Again, with miniscript, still beware, especially if you write your own custom thing. The miniscript language is designed to prevent footguns, and the compilation would fail if it is unspendable. But still, with that much complexity comes a lot of responsibility. So practice your recovery, make sure you can create valid transactions before you send any Bitcoin there. And most likely also just test it on the test networks to make sure that it really behaves the way that you expected. But honestly, as an everyday user, you're probably not going to write your own mini script. Most likely the user interface of the wallet just gives you a couple options that make sense, and it will use the predefined miniscript that the developers have tested and so on. That's at least how Nunchuck has implemented it. But yeah, if you're a developer, you can have a whole bunch of fun with this. As an everyday user, it's probably not going to be relevant to you. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, are you saying I shouldn't vibe code my inheritance plan? I mean, you can. You'd be surprised how far you can get probably. But I wouldn't put a lot of money into it until you're really confident that it works. Again, Bitcoin script is really nasty, and a lot of Bitcoin were lost with its weirdnesses. Miniscript helps, but it's still weird. It's kind of still just a patch, so yeah, be careful here. Whenever you touch custom Bitcoin scripts, it's it makes sense to pay as a knowledgeable security auditor to take a look. Yeah, so these are the hardware wallets that support Miniscript. I forgot to say the Spectre hardware wallet also does. So yeah, and the Tap Signer. Tap Signer is a really dumb credit card looking like signer, which doesn't have a screen or buttons. It just signs anything that it gets given, which is very different from the regular hardware wallet security model, and therefore not useful at all for single sig. Like, don't put your money onto a single sig tap signer. That's probably a bad idea. But it's really useful in more complicated scripts where you need multiple signatures. And if you need to sign on both your phone and the tap signer, then all of a sudden that's a pretty good UX to security trade-off. Cool, next slide, please. Check for questions. None new. Keep them coming, right? So if you will want, I puked a whole bunch of detailed info on you during the session, but the thing that you most likely would want to go with is a 2 out of 3 multi-signature. If you want to go fancy, take 3 different hardware wallets, put them in 3 different places, and coordinate that via Nunchuck, and connect to your own node over Tor. So that gives you the 2 out of 3 multi-signature without any time locks, and honestly, it's probably going to be good enough. If you do want to go more into the powerful use cases of Miniscript and time scripts, Nunchuck gives you some basics, but the Liana wallet is much more sophisticated here. So use that if you want to have the most advanced Bitcoin script capability and a nice UX that works with hardware wallets. Yeah, these are probably the sane recommendations I can give to at least look more into it. Again, maybe multi-signature is not even necessary for you at all. I'm always a bit hesitant to recommend it just because it's complicated and relatively new, at least many pieces in the stack. And single sig plus passphrase is still really good enough for many use cases. But for some it is not, and for some it absolutely makes sense to go into multisig. And for those cases, this is a good setup you can use. Next up. Ultimately, there are still real clear-cut things that you should not do. One is to not reuse your seed across multi-sigs, like using the same private key in different multi-sig signers. I mean, you can do this, and you can get fancy with the same set of 12 words, but 3 different passphrases, and that's your 2 out of 3. But ultimately, that's probably not how it's well designed for, and you probably want to be more standard and just create a new set of private keys, which also gives you the benefit of new sources of entropy. And so if that one source of entropy was broken, you're still good. Another important one is always verify your addresses. Verify them on the hardware wallets itself, across all of them, on your coordinator, after you've imported a backup, and before you send money in. And so really make sure that everything checks out on all the different devices that you have. And back up your descriptors. Again, these are the treasure map that you need alongside the private key to actually unlock the treasure. But it sucks if you have the key, but you have forgotten where you buried the treasure. And that's why you absolutely have to back up your descriptor. Here also, we've talked about this, how to back up properly. The seed hammer, great device. Another thing is you probably want to diversify. Like, multi-signature makes 0 sense if you have, 3 12-word backups of each of the 2 out of 3 multi-sig keys, and you put the 3 pieces of paper on top of each other in a drawer. That's really bad, because now you have one location that gives you all 3 secrets. So use the benefit that multi-signature gives you and then actually store it in separate places. This also is, by the way, where expense comes in, right? Because imagine if you have 3 out of 5 multi-signature, now you need to back up 5 hardware wallets, at least 5 paper backups, probably want to duplicate and have 2 backups for each for each private key. So now you have 10 paper backups plus 5 hardware wallets plus 5 pins to the hardware wallets that you need to keep in a separate place as the actual hardware, and then potentially 5 passphrases on top of that. And if you would want to have a new location for each one of them, you're all of a sudden very quickly with like 30 locations that you need. So that's why you would want to keep the use of high quorums in check, because maybe you cannot have a secure backup strategy for such a large multi-sig wallet, and then you might as well use a 2 out of 3 if your backups are all in the same location.
Which is, by the way, also a reason why Casa, when they started with their multi-sig wallet, promoted a so-called seedless multi-sig, not meaning that there's no seed behind the key generation, but that users or their customers don't need to back up the seeds to their existing wallet. So the client would have, I think, 2 hardware wallets, 1 software wallet. I think 1 was at Casa, or 3 hardware wallets, 1 software, and 1 was at Casa. And whenever the client find out that this hardware wallet doesn't work anymore, or I lost it, then Casa assisted in a key rotation, which unfortunately moved the funds, so it created a transaction history and maybe unwanted, but it allowed the users to basically not store these backups and still have multisig, which I found interesting. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, right? If loss of one private key is not critical because you have other private keys that can sign, then maybe you don't need to worry about backups. And that is true as long as only a subset of these fails. But the good thing is with backups is you just decrease the likelihood of failure, of loss of access. But you increase the likelihood of unauthorized access and someone stumbling upon your backup location. So yeah, the trade-off of Casa makes sense, especially because they have a company service provider that is there in between to co-sign and provide you other services. So in their holistic package, it makes sense. If you run it all by yourself and you get your own 3 hardware wallets, etc., honestly, I would still want to have the private keys somewhere backed up.
Mm-hmm. By the way, just a fun fact, you mentioned that multisig is not that old, but it's one of the first BIPs, actually. It's BIP 11 by Gavin Andreessen, defined the first M of N wallet transaction scheme. But I agree that multisig is still not there, not as useful or easy to use as we would have imagined maybe 10 years ago or 15. What needs to be done for the wallet developers, if there's any, to make this super simple and combine a simple interface to a multisig with a time locking mechanism without running into issues?
Yeah, I think there's a huge UX hurdle here, because a single sig wallet and a multi-sig wallet behave very differently from a UX point of view. Like in a single sig wallet, you can simply assume that 12 words are the wallet. And it's true because there's only one standardized way to get from 12 words to the wallet. But with things like output, with multi-sig, that gets a lot more complicated, and you need your output descriptors and all of this. So yeah, it's a UX challenge, and then just also touching anything custom with Bitcoin script is dangerous. So waiting until miniscript also helps. A hardware wallet support was also lacking. Many hardwares simply don't do this. So there's a lot of complexity there that makes it difficult for a wallet developer to quickly add it. But we have seen numerous wallets that started from the ground up to be multi-signature friendly, and I guess Nunchuck is the prime example for this. And they just went hardcore from the beginning of saying there is a difference between keys and wallets. That was one of the early and very novel UX decisions that they made. I haven't seen anyone who did that before them, and it works for the multi-sig case, but it just adds a whole bunch of friction that other default wallets don't.
B shared the BIP 85, so I opened it up, and I have to read this, guys, for you. The abstract of BIP 85 starts with one seed to rule them all, one key to find them, one path to bring them all, and in cryptography, bind them. I thought you would appreciate this one. Whoever is a fan of Lord of the Rings. Cool, please continue.
Yeah, next slide, please. And on BIP 85, this is a way that you can derive, where you can derive another set of 12 words from your initial set of 12 words. Yeah, just another way that you can use derivation. So yeah, let's talk a bit more about maintaining your wallet. And for this is really regular checkups that includes single sig, but also extends to multi-sig. And you want to know if any one of your devices failed. Because if you have a 2 of 3 multi-sig, your setup is secure if one device fails. But if one device fails and you don't notice it, then all of a sudden you're using a wallet that has no more room for error. And multisig is therefore only secure if you frequently check on your devices to make sure that they're all still there. And in the case that one breaks, then you migrate your funds, as Lena said in Casa, with making an on-chain transaction. This includes checking your descriptor, pins to the hardware wallet, your 12-word backups, maybe encrypted SD card or USB backups, etc. And then checking that all the addresses that you get are still the same. Also updating your firmware, another really crucial piece of aspect here. Victor has a question about, can you show a output descriptor? We've had one in the previous slides. I don't think we have one.
I'm looking for it. I will look, and when I find, I'll share.
Think of it as a string of text. It includes things like your XPub and derivation path and wallet fingerprint. So it's a large, one paragraph of text, and it's machine readable, but you can read it too if you know what the fields stand for. And next slide 2, please. So if anything goes wrong, take a breath. First of all, don't panic, and then work through and troubleshoot might be going on, and check if your index paths are correct, if your wallet descriptors were moved over and stored in the hardware wallet, if you had the correct passphrase, and all of these things that could go wrong. Just troubleshoot them one by one. If the restore fails of a initial hardware wallet, like you forget the pin to the hardware wallet, for example, then you can always get a new hardware wallet, set a new pin that you write down this time and don't forget, and then you import the private key of that initial hardware wallet that you lost, because you still have a backup on Steel. And then you also import the wallet descriptor into the new hardware wallet. And then that new hardware wallet will be able to send and sign transactions. And you don't have to migrate your wallet in this case. You only need to migrate wallet if you lose entire access to a backup or to a key, or if an adversary gets access to one of your keys. That's when you need to do a full rotation and move all the money out of the old wallet, which the old set of keys can spend, and into a new wallet. Also, one thing to notice for time locks is if you use these relative time locks, or even the absolute ones, you need to be aware when they expire, because you don't want to have that your backup path gets unlocked early in case it's not needed. Like in the inheritance case, you're still alive, so you don't want that your heirs can spend the money directly. Cool. Next slide. And yeah, again, questions, keep them coming. So, and also I just realized Vito's question, yes, you can encode a output descriptor in a QR code. That's one of the ways to get it into your hardware wallet. Cool, so to kind of sum this up, what is multi-sig good for? It's good for distributing risk and having not one single device that knows all of your secrets. It's really good for traveling because you can travel with a partially signed transaction. And if it gets intercepted while you're traveling, the money cannot move in any other direction. It also works with duress and decoy protocols. And it works really well together with timelocks, even though that's more of an advanced niche use case. And as always, it's important that you have this well documented and the important people know exactly what's up, and important people include your heirs and other business partners. Yeah, next slide.
If I may just quickly share my screen, if that's possible, to show this is an example of the wallet descriptor. I don't know who asked, Victor asked. I hope you can see it well.
Yeah, and here you see, for example, it starts with WSH, so this stands for witness script hash. That's the address type that is used. Multi stands for it's a multi-sig. Then the number 2, meaning it's a 2 of. Further down at the bottom, you see. Oh no, wait, there are. Then you see 3 public keys. So there, you know it's a 2 of 3, and you see the exact XPub of that wallet, together with the derivation path and the wallet fingerprint. So this gives you exactly the private key that needs to be used. And at the end is a checksum. So in the case that there's any typos or bits of the QR code that get scratched off, you can recover that and be sure that it's correct. So this is a descriptor for 2 of 3. And as you hang more spending conditions and time logs and other paths, that gets longer. Cool.
Okay, cool.
You can go back to the slides. Yep. So yeah, what's important, I think, for you guys to walk out of this meeting from? Okay, another question, Victor. Practically, how do you save this next to your seed as the backup place? QR code is a good way. Yeah, so you can either write it down by hand. That's annoying because XPubs are, well, ciphertext looking. You can encode it in the QR. It's difficult to do manually, but your seed hammer can do that. That's my recommended steel backup, precisely because it allows you to engrave the output descriptor of a 2 of 3 wallet on the other side of the steel plate. So on the one side of the steel plate, you have 12 words. On the other side, you have the output descriptor. Both of them together forever. And yeah, that's a good way. Alternatively, password managers, encrypted USB sticks, yeah, printed out on paper, all options to better or worse extent. So yeah, what I'd like you to walk away from this meeting with is, for one, knowing what's available, and then asking yourself on what exactly is fitting to your setup. Do you have enough backup locations? Are you willing to spend more money on hardware wallets? Are you okay with the technical complexity of multisig? If no, then there's no shame in that. Just stick with single sig, do it right, have good backups, use passphrases, and so on, and you'll be good. If multisig is needed for you, then there's easy tools out there. If time locks are needed, again, maybe questioning yourself why, because it does complicate the situation, and is there really enough reason for that extra cost? But then if you do need it, check out Liana. And yeah, important, never reveal your secrets, right? That's the ultimate thing. So even public settings like this, it's difficult to talk about your own personal setup. That's why we have the one-on-one sessions where we can talk much more about something where you have a more custom action plan for you. Next slide. Yeah, that's it. So main part of the seminar is over. Again, time for questions. You've already had a couple of great ones during the chat, so keep them coming. Other than that, thanks very much for listening, and I'll hand back over to Sophie.
Or to me, thanks. I just want to say it was great, and at certain moments you also made my head hurt. So, Sophie, if you could just forward to the future slide, guys. This is quite technical. I'm a Bitcoiner myself. I would need help with some of these things. So if you think you want to go for the multi-sig and you want to talk to Max or other colleagues from the team, just go ahead to our website and book a session, a one-on-one. We also do other topics. We cover plenty of digital security. So we perceive digital security as the basis. If your phone is leaking data on you, then you personally can be safe. But other than that, the Gart is mostly focused on the physical security and physical safety. And so these two pillars support you likewise. So we have different advisory sessions available. Just go check out Gart.io/advisory. Or if you want to bring your personal safety even to a better level, then spending a day with an expert in an in-person training or workshop, I think is ideal. How many of you have been in the space for a while and haven't done enough work in the realm of personal safety? And, at the beginning, we had a slide that said, not your keys, not your coins. And we are trying to rephrase it into not your safety, not your coins. Ultimately, it all comes down to how you and your family and your circle of trust work together for the future, and not just to keep the digital assets safe, but also other more important assets such as the loved ones. And finally, I would like to invite you to our next webinars. The upcoming next week we will do on the Gart app. Gart app has been now in public beta testing for a little while. If you are interested in seeing the alerts that are happening as we speak during the testing, then go to Gart.io/live. We will go into how Gart app is built on the user level and the technical level, what we are foreseeing for the future of the app. And of course, we would love to have this conversation with you on what you want from a safety app, so that we can build around that. And then in October, alongside the Plan B Forum Lugano, we will organize a Gart workshop, which is an in-person training, a whole day program with our amazing instructor, Jeff. So please, if you are around Switzerland at the time, 2 days before the main event, spend 1 day for your own sake. Okay, I would wrap up. Thank you so much, Max. This was a heavy and difficult topic, and I think you've tackled it really well. I will not comment on this slide. We will show more about the Gart app on the next in the next week. And until then, keep safe, keep stealth, and smart. Thank you. Thanks for joining.